Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abi.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Woo-wee. Wow. 2020. That went by very, very, very slow and fast all at the same time. And what a whirlwind.
Yeah, no, this year has been wild. In fact, I wrote you a letter for Christmas this year.
You did.
Am
did.
I a better wife than you are husband?
No, not at all. I have been preparing an entire home for you, which we're going to get into. I'm kind of the better person in the relationship.
Yeah, I don't think so. But I was writing you a letter, and I started with last Christmas and then was talking through all the things that have happened this year. And it was a little bit overwhelming thinking about how many ups and downs we had in 1 year.
Oh, I know. So today we want to do kind of a year in review, a little bit about 2020, a little bit about specifically worldwide 2020, a little bit about year in review with The Connected Life and our experience, and send y'all off with a bang.
A bang, bang, bang.
This is going to be a fun episode, a nostalgic
we hope so.
episode. I don't know what this episode's going to be.
We're going to find out.
Yeah.
We did a thing.
We did a thing.
We did a thing.
We bought a house.
We bought a house.
We bought our first house.
You guys, we've been trying to get a house for like 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Is it, or longer.
No, 6 years. 6
Yeah.
years. And to no avail.
6
and I
years,
think
it felt like 20.
our realtor, Jesse, I'm pretty sure like he is
At
the,
one point,
the second coming of Christ, the patience he had with us in 6 years.
At one point, we gave him just some monies because we're like,
It's
I'm
just a
so
gift.
sorry.
Like, here, thank you. Because he had visited so many homes with us in the journey. But we like when we felt it, we felt it. In fact, this is the big news that we want to share with you guys. So for the morning of our 100th episode, I woke up super early at like 5 a.m. And I had a crazy night, and I shared that on the 100th episode. And so I only had a few hours of sleep. When I woke up, I opened up and saw in my email a Zillow ad, which I've been following Zillow and stuff like that. And there was something like, I was just going to, throw it away because I throw a lot of those away. But I felt like I was supposed to open this Zillow one up. Now, what's interesting is we back up, because I think this is a fun story to start the podcast off with. We rewind about a month. A month prior, I get a phone call from a former client.
Yeah.
And this former client says, hey, Justin, this is just going to be an interesting conversation. I want to share something with you. And I was like, okay, go ahead. And he goes, just take it for what it is. Take it or leave it. Like, no pressure on it. But I feel like during a prayer time that's like I had this unction internally that you're going to have a home in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to buy a home, and I'm going to be part of the process of helping you purchase it. Rewind a year earlier when I had initially started with this client. He's very well respected in the mortgage lending industry and stuff like that. And he had said after he'd started working with me, he said, I know that this sounds weird, but I actually felt before I ever started working with you that something told me I was going to help you in the journey of buying a home. So I was just
a year ago,
and then
a few months ago,
a few months ago, fast forward, he's like, hey. So I was like, okay, well, we had set down the whole house buying journey pretty much.
Yeah, we just gave up.
Yeah, it was very defeating.
We tried so many different ways, and there were so many random blocks, and so we gave up.
And so all of a sudden I was like, well, I'm going to start looking again at homes.
And to be honest, I thought that's dumb. And when this client told you that, I was like, yeah, I've heard it all before. It was kind of funny. But then a couple homes came up, and I was like, hey, I want to go look at these homes. And you begged me to come. And
you're like, all right, fine. I will do it. I will humor you in this journey. And I told you, I'm not going to bully you in this journey with a home. We have to both feel it. You're not going to have to feel pressure or me being like disappointed or kicking if you say no to something.
Oh, yeah.
And so fast forward, we re-engaged Jesse, and which I hadn't engaged him in forever. And that morning, the Zillow pops up, and I decided to scroll into it, and I didn't see anything, and I was about to delete it, and it said view entire message, like it had been clipped. And I was like, okay, I'll look. And one more house popped up. And the minute that house popped up, I saw it without looking, opening it up or seeing inside the house. And I immediately was like, oh my gosh, I just found our house. I had this knower say it. And I was, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, finish that story, then I'm going to share one.
Oh, yeah.
You just had the knower.
My knower hit, and I looked at it, and it said it had been listed 9 hours prior. So late night.
Yep.
The listing agent put it up.
Yep.
And so I knew immediately. I heard that. I felt this thing internally, like
this is your house.
And this is my house, and if we don't act immediately, it's going to get picked off.
Yeah. And I came into the office, and you're like, I found our house, Abby. I found our house, and I was like, yeah. I zero faith or hope or excitement about it at all. In fact, okay, so a year ago, we'd found our dream house in Redding and went on the market, and we walked through it, and both of us were like, this is our dream. This is what we want. This is the location we want. It was great. It was a great price. And we both knew. I mean, it was like such a deep knowing that we were not supposed to put an offer on the house.
We walked out of that house, and we looked at each other, and I was like, do you feel what I feel? And you're like, we're not supposed to get it.
Yeah,
I'm like,
it's
no.
perfect. It's everything I wanted, and we're not supposed to.
And we thought maybe we're moving to Colorado at that point, and we were ready to get out of this place.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So when you took me to this house, now it was the house right next door.
Literally right to the left of it.
Yeah. And it is a better layout. And a better,
more square footage, and a big and an extra car garage.
Yeah, I mean it's better, and it has all of the individual things that we had on our.
Literally, one of the things that I had told Jesse consistently is like, Jesse, I have to have a tub with a view. Yeah. I just want a tub that I can sit in after work, long days of work, and stare out a window and see a view. And it has the most stunning view and a tub there. And Jesse, literally, when we walked into it, he was like, it's your tub with a view. It was so amazing. And now the beauty of it is that it was built in 1990. And the precious woman who lived in it is older. And
the house smelled horrible. It smelled like cat piss, cat turds, plus old people home, plus throw up and diarrhea, plus some Glade flowers.
It was rough smelling. But the beauty of that...
I mean, it accosted everybody who went into it.
Yeah, accosted them. Yeah. But the beauty of that is that my dream is that we could have I didn't want a home that had been redone. I wanted a home that we could make our own.
To redo together.
And not have to pay in the price. Like somebody updated it only to pay for it, then have to rip it out and repay for it.
Yeah.
So it was a really cool situation that happened. And
so the day that we saw it, we put an offer in. And the next day, tell them what the lady said.
The lady said after I sent a letter in about what we felt about the home, we didn't tell her the smell was horrific. The listing agent knew that. The listing agent is precious and was a friend of hers. But she was like, this couple, this is their home. They have to have this home. Cancel all other showings. I will not show it to anyone else. They're supposed to have my home.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
That was amazing.
And my friend who told me about it, my former client / friend, he
got you the loan.
He was the one that like made a loan go through so quickly and at an incredible rate.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So it was this Christmas miracle that happened.
It's a real weird thing because it was not anything on our radar, not on my radar. There's nothing. I had zero hope for this.
Well, we didn't have anything like that on our radar until all of a sudden.
All of our friends had given up hope for us because we'd been through so many housing ups and downs. They're like, go try to get that one. We'll see.
But there are moments of suddenlies, and that's a little something that we want to talk about today. I know that this may feel like a long intro, but it actually is part of the entire podcast, which is, 2020 was something rather that felt disastrous for a lot of people. It felt overwhelming if you participated in social media, if you watched mainstream media or anything like that. Everything was it was like this ongoing civil war that wasn't fought with guns.
Right. And
it was fought with emotions and harsh language and crazy up and down experiences and some guns and some violence and stuff like that. It was a crazy year, but hidden inside of it was miracles, I think, for a lot of people. And I think that if we get lost in the narrative of how bad it was, it could be really hard for us to see miracles, but miracles are still happening. Goodness is still happening in 2020. Suddenlies are happening. There are some of you that, for us, there was so many years. You guys have followed this podcast. If you've been following us for any level of time, you've heard the stories of our sickness and almost dying and then coming out of it. There are seasons of suffering that happen for people. And some of you maybe entered into suffering in 2020 for your first time, like a legitimate, like, oh, this was a suffering experience. Everything was totally chill with my life and normal for years. And then all of a sudden I got hit with that. And so some of you are freshly in a season of suffering and you may already be going like, does this ever end? 2020 was hell for me. And first off, I just want to say there's hope for those of you that are listening like that. There are seasons of suffering that do happen inside of humanity. They're real. They happen. But there are seasons of victory, seasons of suddenlies where all of a sudden life begins to spring up and spring forth and joy and hope comes on the other side of mourning. And so some of you have been in a season of mourning, and that may have been this year. It may have been the last 4 years, but there are promises of goodness that are here and available to us. All we have to do is just say yes and continue to choose in.
Yeah, it's interesting because I would say for me, this year has been some of the best things that have happened and some of the hardest, worst things that have happened.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have seasons that is all bad or all good, but then there's lots of seasons where it's both. And that feels like the season that that's what I would call 2020, the year of both for me. And I think it's valuable when you're in a mixture of both to be able to validate how hard the heart is and how beautiful the beauty is.
And it's very easy.
It's hard to hold both of those at the same time.
It's true. It's easy to get lost in one or the other. It's very like 2020 for some people, like even if it was the worst year possible you've had, there's still goodness that marks the year. But if you can't hold the balance of two realities, you'll tend to lean towards one side or the other. You'll either
it was all horrible
or it was the best thing ever and you dissociated.
Yeah.
And you went, because we've been talking about that on the podcast, dissociation. You dissociated from the year and you were like, it was just fine. Nothing bad happened whatsoever. And you're on a delay timer for grief.
That is a great way to explain it. A delay timer. Absolutely. But it is fun to see that I think the house brings this idea. And Justin instantly knew it was right. And when I walked in it, I knew it was right. But I didn't feel that like magical feeling.
Right.
I want to.
No, let me say this. We're standing in the master bathroom and we're looking around and she has a very serious look on her face. Not like an excited one, just like a frozen, serious tone. And I was like, Abby, I'm going to put it in your ball court, but I feel like this is our home. And you look at me and you're like, just put an offer in on it. And you like walked off. And I knew at that moment that you knew that it was our house too.
Oh, totally. I knew it.
Like,
I
didn't
knew
know
it,
what to do
but
with
I was
that.
like, this is not the time. I mean, literally, when you started looking for houses, I was like, this is not the time to buy a house. The economy, who knows what's going to happen with it? Who knows what the world's doing? And then I was like, a lot of my friends were leaving. I mean, 5 of my best friends in 4 months.
Oh, bailing out of California like every sensible person does.
Yeah. And so I was like devastated at the idea of buying a house where everyone has just left me. And so I was like, I know this is right. It doesn't make any logical sense to my emotions though. And so I literally left the house, told you to stay with the realtor and write a letter. And I went and like cried.
You did. I was like, this is the weirdest moment of my life where this should be like, yay, we found something. Nope. No, it's not it.
And it's also very like, and I think anybody out there can know this. Like if you've been single for years and then you meet someone and you start dating, or
it feels too good to be true.
Well, not just it feels too good to be true. There's a lot of expectations that you're like, so this is the thing I've been waiting for 6 years.
So this is the person I'm going to marry.
So this is what I had to do. And I actually love the house so much. And now every time I go into it, it feels like a dream come true. But I wanted to be real about the process so that people can hear that, because oftentimes things don't immediately feel amazing.
And by the way, I've spent the last 3 days gutting it, working like 16-hour days.
That's why I like it now. It's so much better. But in 3 days, you'd ripped out all of the flooring, all of the built-in cabinets, all of the you demolished.
Yeah, there's still a lot more to go, but
yes.
But I'm in that process. And it's interesting because, again, it's not like when experiences happen, we can be given gifts where God offers us something and says, here you go. Here's the thing that is for your heart. And you're like, but it doesn't fully look like it yet.
Yeah.
and it doesn't fully feel like it, like in the sense of, I think I should have butterflies when this happens, and it should be this rainbow that comes out, and I don't know, doves that are released. Instead, it's like you were very like,
I was like
mellow. And,
oh, yep.
Okay, what is this?
I was like a robot. I was like, okay, I guess this is right. I feel nothing about it, and I felt sad for you because you were so excited.
You felt the yes, but you felt nothing emotionally as far as excitement. In fact, you felt the opposite of that.
Yeah, I felt like sad.
Meltdown for 2 days, 2 or 3 days.
I had to cry a couple times because I was like, I don't want to be trapped and running. But now I feel delighted and so excited, and now it is a magical.
But the point is that there are yeses that are hiding. There are these
that we don't know when they're going to come.
We don't, but there's an invitation to a journey where we just choose in and we begin to follow the breadcrumbs, and those breadcrumbs might last months, they might last years. We don't understand the fullness of the story, and hindsight is 2020. And that's the lesson we're going to take out of 2020.
Yeah.
Is that, when it looks like, when we don't understand the story we're in, the experience we're having, that's okay. We don't have to understand all of it. There's something about a faithful yes and trusting that at some point in time you look back and you go, I didn't know that all of that I went through was unto something so much more beautiful. I didn't know it could be this good. I just kept saying yes and trusting. That's all I did. It's all I knew how to do. And just stay faithful with what was in front of me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just a hopeful reminder that we don't know what our path is taking us. Like, I think about 2020. So it started last January in December. I was so sick that one of my best friends, who is worked in the medical field and is very stable and consistent, called you in a panic.
Yeah, she was having a full-blown meltdown.
Which is literally not her personality.
Yes, it was one of those where it sent me into like a spiral the way that she processed.
Because she was everybody who could see me, who knew me, was legitimately concerned. And they were like, you need to put her in the hospital until they figure out what to do with her, until they can fix this. Because people were like scared of how bad I was.
Yeah.
Scared of how sick I was, scared of what was going on, and I was too, and you were too.
Oh yeah, I was already scared that you were going to die, and I'd already been sitting on that for 8 months.
Yeah,
of going, I don't know what the next solution is for her to how to help her.
Yeah, and so when I think back, so that was the beginning of 2020, and crying, shaking in your arms because of being in so much pain, and so much trauma, and having the physical pain send me into PTSD from past circumstances, but then also just having the pain be so unbearable, losing so much of my life, not being able to walk, not being able to eat anything, not being able to get off the couch, not being able to get outside. It was, horrific. And then I think about the breadcrumbs leading to us going to Spain. Which
retell just really briefly our friend's dream.
Yeah. Just a friend of ours had a dream. I was looking for a new doctor, and a friend of ours had a dream. And in the dream, I suddenly took off and went to Lebanon. And he was like, where did she go? And his wife was like, she went to Lebanon to get healing. And that was the end of the dream. And I was like, what do you think it means? And he's like, I know you're looking for a doctor. Maybe the doctor that you're going to work with is from Lebanon. And I thought, okay, to be honest, this was a year of lots of skepticism for me.
It was.
Lots of I've been in Christian circles for a long time, and everybody prophesies all kinds of stuff all the time. They're like, this is going to happen for you, and good things are around the corner. And a lot of times it never looks the way you think it's going to look. And so I had a good amount of skepticism about everything. Thus, when your friend was like, you're going to get in a house in the next 6 months, I'm like, we'll see. But that can give you guys hope out there if you're out there. You don't have to. I think there's this common belief you have to have faith to make God happy, and you have to have faith for something to work out for you. And I think you can actually be human and be honest and be real and have parts of it that are hopeful and parts of it that are hopeless and parts of it that are disappointed and parts of it that are in anticipation. And I think that's a very real part of the journey. But so he told me the dream. I was like, sure, I guess. And then I had met with this woman that week about this doctor that she worked for. And she was like, Abby, I think you're supposed to go to Spain. I think that it is a trip that you need to make.
Which some of you had followed that journey, and you were so loving and supportive and got behind us. And I know I cried so many times as I watched people support us and jump in many different ways, from buying the Compassion Project to sending us special gifts and stuff like that, where I was undone. And we haven't talked a lot about that since that all happened, because we were really braced with your health going, I don't know where this is going to go. And do we celebrate it or not? Because it could be, it's at minimum a 4-month process before we see results. And that started in March. But anyways, going there, we'll go with this.
So I talked with her. She's like, I think you're supposed to go to Spain. I knew instantly that I was supposed to. I could just feel it, even though it was a very, very expensive trip. I just knew this is the right thing to do. And so at the end of that meeting, I said, hey, where's the doctor? Dr. Helu is the doctor. Where's he from? And she was like, oh, he's from Lebanon. And so it was just like one of those like moments where you're like, oh, okay, that's wild. And so we called the office and they got us in within that month. Like, from that day.
They weren't supposed to be able to do that.
No, they worked us in really fast. We literally bought our tickets. Justin so graciously traded in every point we'd ever had our entire lives. We'd never spent any of our mileage, and he traded them all in for a first class ticket for me. And I was thinking, even that, like, I was so sick, I was concerned I wouldn't make it to Spain.
You were terrified. You could not make it on a plane.
I was terrified of the trip. I didn't, and so it was very kind of you to get me the first class lay down seats, and we went to Spain. And there was so much, like Justin said, support from you guys. It was really incredible.
Oh my gosh, the people who followed and commented. I remember multiple times while I was there, and I just cried while I get messages of, we're praying for you. And there were miracles there in Spain, just in the people that we met, the relationships we built.
Yeah.
The exchanges that we had, where it was like family members that we met, and we felt like we were all in something together. Who were also at the health facility there. Yeah.
So that was a miraculous journey. It was a beautiful trip.
And what was incredible is that it was right before all the lockdowns happened.
Oh, we got back the day everything locked down.
The day the lockdown happened with the plane flights, as far as people coming into America from other countries, U.S. citizens could get back in. We didn't even know if we'd get back in at that point. And so we were the first travelers through, where TSA was trying to figure out how to handle this whole thing.
Yeah. And we got back. We left the day that Spain locked down. So literally,
Spain went into full lockdown that day.
If we would have gotten stuck there, we would have gotten stuck. It's just really
the
miraculous.
Timing, and that's
we
what
made
we
it through the entire treatment process.
Everything that you needed. And it was gonna be delayed till May before we went. It was like, oh, it's now or May. And it was like, no, we're supposed to go now.
Yeah.
And had we done May, we wouldn't have gotten to do the treatment.
It didn't make sense. And then you need 4 months of recovery where you're supposed to like take it easy.
And
so
that's
I
all
literally
Corona
came
was.
back and yes.
Everyone's just staying in their homes. And so you had this recovery space.
It was really fascinating, because now when we're looking back telling the story, it sounds like this miraculous thing. And I was just thinking about when I was living it, I was so grateful for all of those things. Like, I was aware.
Moment by moment.
Moment by moment. I was like, oh, it's amazing that we're getting back. It's amazing that we got the full treatment. Because even we met somebody there who started treatment after us, and they had to leave and go back to their country and not get the treatment. But so looking back, we're like, wow, look at how perfectly that worked out. But in the middle of it, I was so in desperation and so broken, and like it was so painful that there was like joy that it was happening, but you couldn't even really celebrate it. So now I'm like telling the story. I'm like, wow, it sounds like we're so lucky and we have such great favor, but it didn't feel like that while I was in it. I mean, again, I wasn't not grateful. I was thankful for the breadcrumbs, but when you're in the middle of the journey, the breadcrumbs you don't know if they're going anywhere. You don't know if they're going to get you anywhere. You don't know if one thing will lead to something else. True. Like, I just remember over and over again being like devastated. Like, I don't know if I'm going to make it out of this. I don't know what it's going to be like. And so now it's really beautiful to look back and be like, wow, everything literally lined up perfectly.
Yeah, it was so incredibly beautiful. And I watched, as we returned, and it's kind of like, well, what's the next step? And as you were processing just healing, all of a sudden I had this unction and these happenstances, which we talked about in previous podcasts, where I end up meeting this person and we go on this journey of recording my book together, The Tree of Life. And because Corona had shut things down in a certain way, there was kind of like a nothingness happening, and it freed up my life to be able to go, oh, it's time to pursue and complete something that I've long dreamt of. And a dream started making itself manifest in the middle of nothingness.
Yeah.
Happening right before my very eyes. And I felt like I was coming alive in a new way, because even in that season, and we talked about this before, I started doing vocal lessons on getting my voice back. A part of my voice, or my confidence emotionally, is what my friend Jess Souza worked on with me. And that led to this whole deep dive into freedom that I got access to. And I don't think that would have happened if Corona didn't go down.
Yeah. I mean,
and in the middle of it, it was just like, I'm just doing today. I don't even know what the rest of 2020 is going to hold. I just know I'm supposed to record this book now.
Yeah. It was amazing watching you come alive in that process and like step into it and follow. And it's interesting because there's this constant journey that all of us are on, and we never know how the pieces will tie together. Like, we don't know even like in 10 years what you recording the audiobook this year.
Right. I may in 10 years look back and go, in 2030 and go, remember 2020 when I recorded this?
I had no idea
this was going to happen with the book, through the book. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun. I think it's interesting because we recorded a podcast. It's kind of fun because we're hitting a lot of what we talked about throughout the podcast right now. We recorded a podcast with the Adventure Challenge boys, Ben and Bryant. And we recorded that around June, right before we went to Montana in July. Yeah. And that was such again, you don't know the moments that will change your life when they're happening, typically. I mean, every once in a while, but most of the time it just feels like a very normal moment. Yeah. But I remember we sat down for that recording, and I can't even tell you what it was, but something inside me got so agitated from that recording. Like, something inside of me started churning. Justin can attest. I processed after processed after processed after processed. Spun me out because something about the Adventure Challenge, the life that I could feel, I could recognize like how dead my soul had become. Like, and I just think that happens when you're in survival for so long. Like, you quit. It's kind of like a phone. I think like I quit all the apps, all the fun apps. So I'm literally just trying to keep my battery alive for like 3 more minutes, you know? Truth. So it's like all of the apps are gone, which means the phone is way more basic and there's way less fun things to do. And I think that's how my life had become. I'd gotten so used to just like barely making it, like, and just surviving. And so then I was around these people where like they were about loving life and adventuring. And I was like, I used to be this way. Like, I used to be fun. I used to do things and get out and be around people. And I just, it started this agitation, like reminding me that I used to do adventures outside. And then we immediately went to Montana. And so I was like, I have to find ways. And it's one of the things I feel really proud of myself for in this year is I kept finding little ways to adventure in the midst of feeling like so much death. So I remember like in Montana, we were at this lake and it was freaking cold. But I was like, I'm going to swim in the lake. If I swim for 1 minute in the lake and that's all I can do, but that is like being adventurous and not just staying in my comfort zone on the boat, then I'm going to do that.
That was fun watching you dive in.
And so it ended up sparking this. I mean, one moment and then that moment related to me connecting to the Adventure Challenge boys more, which connected us to some other friends. Like all of a sudden there ended up opening up a bunch of relationships.
Which is funny because in 2020, that's when lockdown, basically the year is marked by lockdown and everything being shut down, where relationships feel like they're being distanced. Yet it was a year where there was so much connection for us.
And I mean, like I had to like apologize to some people and like say like, hey, I've had my walls up to you. I didn't even know that I had. There was a lot of things like that, but it began this process. And then So the Adventure Challenge connected us with Sammy and Spencer. They've both been on the show also. We had known them longer than that, but there was
relational dynamics that pushed us all back together.
Yeah. In a beautiful way. We were never I want to make sure there wasn't like a weird betrayal or separation. It's just that they had moved.
Yeah.
They had moved.
Yeah. So
it just reconnected.
It organically created relational connection and stuff like that.
And that started me on the journey of like having friends come here that do adventures where I'm being and all of this, what is crazy is now that I look back, it all started at 4 months.
The 4-month mark.
When we hit, so for 4 months, nothing happened in my life. I was still just laying on the couch.
And that's what the doctor said. He promised 4 months from now is when it'll all start changing.
Yes.
And I remember you being so hopeless on that journey of like, I don't think it's really going to happen.
I didn't feel any different.
I don't feel any different. And I was just like, I just got to keep believing that.
We just spent a gajillion dollars in Spain and everybody's watching and nothing has happened. Yeah.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden the shift started happening. What's cool, let me back up real quick, is because of the Corona time and everything locking down when we came back from Spain, there was a unique relationship building that started happening between Ben Bryant and myself. Just because of circumstances, we started spending time going on walks together and hanging out uniquely, and their life slowed down. We both had a slowdown in our lives enough so that we could bond. And so there was like this beautiful gift. What felt like tragedy abroad was actually this big gift setting us up for amazing things. So go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's just when I look back, I'm like the timing. So around 4 months, I started being around friends who were living a little bit more. And it would be, I haven't had like a moment where I'm like, oh, I'm so much better, blah, 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 blah. Like, wow. I haven't had one of those, but it's like every week I have like, oh, I went for one walk this week.
Yeah. And I started watching you go on hikes.
Yeah. Well, wait, it started with like one walk and then it was like a couple walks. And then it was, so I would say like months into the journey of starting to be able to walk again. Then I was able to go on a hike. Then I was able to go on a couple hikes. And I'm not like up to where I'd like to be in hiking, but I did just do a 2.5 mile hike up a mountain.
Which is miraculous.
And
considering
I couldn't believe it.
Move from the couch to the kitchen hardly at all.
Like, and also I couldn't walk because my legs were seizing up all the time.
There's so much pain and ache in them.
Yeah.
I literally would have to backpack you on my back out of situations.
Oh yeah. Even like Sammy, who was on here, multiple times she'd have to carry me if we walked too far. She'd have, and she's strong and buff, so thank goodness for that. But there's this thing of like, it was a very gradual process of I could do just a little bit more than I could the time before. I could do just a little bit more than the time before. And slowly I found myself being able to get out of the house longer and not have to sleep as long during the day. And it was a very, very gradual, but it was also like there were people in my life and events that I was a part of that all of a sudden was giving me something to be excited for and to engage again.
And that's one of the things I wanted to point out is even watching other people's journeys around you who are having a lot of hope and a lot of momentum and things on their life gave you hope. It sparked you to be like, no, that could be my life too. And there's a hope for me. And I think the reason I'm pointing that out is that some of you, again, may be looking heavily at 2020.
Yeah.
And when you hear stories, it's easy to go, oh, that's not for me.
Oh, that's great that they got that. Or
that's great that they got that. But the best posture that helps you can draft off people's successes. You can draft off their favor. You can draft off their hope. You can get in behind them and go, okay, so they walked in this darkness. This was difficult for them, but they got out. All right, I'm going to get behind the hope that they've been able to cultivate. And I'm going to say, yes, that's for me as well. I may not be able to imagine myself fully in it. I may not be able to create or manufacture that hope for myself, but I can look at it and say, yes, that's mine. I choose it.
Yeah, there's something to be said. One lady I heard talk about it said that they're expanders. When you hear somebody have a part of their story and you feel like, oh, that could never happen to me, that always feels like orphan mentality. That happens to me a lot.
Yeah.
I've had it a lot of times where something good will happen to somebody and I'm like, well, that would never happen for someone like me. And I can recognize now that's orphan mentality, the mentality of poverty and lack and not getting your needs met. And so immediately when I feel that churning and I see somebody, I'm like, oh no, they are meant to expand my view of what is possible for my life. They're meant to expand my view of the goodness that can happen for me. They're meant to expand my borders, expand me past where my hopelessness border is. Like they're meant to expand my vision for what is possible. And so when I feel those feelings of that could never happen to me, I am often being like, okay, great. That person is meant to showcase for me what is possible for me. And I always get the choice to choose to believe that's possible for me and that's why it's in front of me and I can see it, or to believe that will never work out for me. My life never has good things happening. And whatever we believe, our lives will follow, because our beliefs really create our momentum. They create our direction.
And the way we respond to moments, the way we respond to people.
Yeah.
Like, the same people that could be part of the momentum on your life, you could be shutting down relationship with them because you're like, ugh, that's not for me. I could never have that. And you just push yourself out of opportunities because of that broken belief system. So part of this, we're talking about invitations. Invitations in other people's lives becoming invitations inside of our lives, and cultivating and digging into what is the goodness, getting a lens for the goodness as we're processing the grief of the bad and the losses as well. There was a lot of other stuff that also happened in our journey. Did you want to make mention of any other things?
I mean, I had PTSD come up hardcore, and I'm still working through it. And it's the most intense thing. And I thought that last year was intense. And this year is so intense.
Yeah, super intense.
And I feel like it is, it's everything that I've been talking about on the journey. I've been working. I think I told people that I started working with a trauma counselor a couple of years ago. And it is kind of like, and we've talked about disassociating. And so I'm reintegrating into my body, which means all of my body memories are coming up from traumatic events in my body. Also means all of the emotion. I'm reintegrating into my emotional world. Before I had the like everything's fine and the everything's horrible bucket, but I didn't have a mixture. And so
the coexisting.
Yeah. So now there is this. So now I'm feeling the pain that I never felt before. And, I mean, my counselor is like, this is so good. This is the way you get out of being sick. Like it's an interesting thing where the better I'm feeling, I'm also processing the deeper emotions. And it's been 3 years of digging into what in my internal world has been a part of manifesting sickness. What in my internal world has been a part of that showing up, and the body keeps the score. The body keeps track of trauma that we don't recognize or that we don't acknowledge or validate. And there's a lot of trauma, and I've shared a little bit about this before, but there's a lot of trauma in my childhood. There's a lot of trauma that I'd gone through. There's multiple layers of it that finally it's like my body is expressing to me how important it was. So it's a very interesting thing because I'm like coming alive, and even like I remember we went to Brian's birthday. It was right when we got back from Montana. And I remember being terrified to go to it. Yeah. You were paralyzed about it. I mean, I was like, and I was like, who is this person? Yeah. Cause you're usually the life of the party, the social butterfly. Yeah. And you were just paralyzed about it. I was terrified. I felt like I was back in middle school. But it was like, I hadn't been around people. I'd been so sick. I hadn't been around people and making new friends. And I have never felt more vulnerable than I have this year. Yeah. It's like trying to learn how to walk again. Yeah. It feels like trying to learn how to live again is much more harder than it sounds. Like, I wish that you could just fully come alive in a moment. Yeah. But it's actually like a choice by choice by choice process. And suddenlies are that. Yes. It is choice by choice by choice by choice, and then a suddenly. It's an accumulation of all the places we push in, all the places we surrender, all the places that we choose hope, all the places that we process pain,
all the defeats, all the victories, all of a sudden it's an accumulation of all that. That is a suddenly.
This is a way to say is rarely do things come quickly. They come gradually, then suddenly. So it can look like it came fast for somebody, but it's typically very gradual.
Did you make that up or did someone else make
somebody
that up?
Somebody else said that. I don't remember who, but somebody else
But it's
did.
one of your favorites, huh?
Yeah. So it was like, I've never been so vulnerable and raw and ripped open. And I can tell like my whole worldview is being tossed up and down in the sense of like, I'm more humble than I ever have been before because I've recognized how truly screwed up as a human I am.
Well, I think that one of the things that you've also been dealing with is removing the self-protector of hierarchy in your life, which is some level of basically saying, I'm less screwed up than maybe the rest of the world. Like, I think I'm a little bit better than I think I am. Not in the sense of I'm better than people. Yeah. But it's this sense of
I never like looked down on people. I never was like a popular kid. I mean, I was always friends with everybody.
But it's like this thing that says, I'm really not this broken, and we lie to ourselves. Like, I'm not this effed up in these ways. I'm actually really good. I mean, other people might have that, but I don't have that.
Yeah, look at that alcoholic. I'm better than them.
You wouldn't say it like that.
I would never say it like that. But that's the concept. Like, look, I'm making good choices for my life.
And I think a lot of people live according to those hierarchies and harsher judgments.
Also, I love all the alcoholics out there.
You precious alcoholic, you.
You precious alcoholic, you.
But a lot of people will go into judgments and hierarchy status to survive, to not have to look at something inside. And so it's normal.
Well, and I learned it from the church.
Right.
I learned it from the church is that you put people on a pedestal. There is somebody who knows how to do life better than you, and they know everything that's right. And then I learned it in my family. Like, I thought I was more capable than my parents at a very young age. So I believed that I was in charge of them and leading them.
I must be the most capable person in my world.
Yes. And so it was never like I'm looking down at people, they're not good enough. It was more just like I have to be leading.
Right. I have to be more capable.
I have to be more capable than everyone. Right. And I'm starting to just recognize like, no, I'm actually truly, truly flawed.
Truly, truly messy.
But I'm not more flawed than everybody else.
Right.
And I'm not less flawed than everybody else.
We're just all flawed equally.
We're all very, very flawed. And all of us want to avoid pain. And all of us are trying to figure out how to survive the hard things that happen on the planet Earth. And all of it. And I'm having this massive, I mean, it kind of feels like sometimes I wonder if the house project we're doing is like a representation of my soul.
I think it is.
Because it's like everything's being knocked out and removed and rebuilt. And that's a painful process. So it's this interesting thing because there's been moments where I felt more alive than I have in years. And then there's been a lot of moments where I felt like this is the most pain I've ever been in. I don't know if I'm going to make it out. How many times have I cried in your arms saying that? Oh,
I countless numbers. And I think what's kind of beautiful is, you talked about this in your letter you gave me today. Actually, today we're recording this on Christmas Day. It's Christmas night, actually. We're cheating. It's late night, and we're sitting here.
We're cheating because he said we could do it tomorrow morning, and I was like, "Let's sleep in and do it now."
Yeah, But you'd pointed out in the letter. What were we talking about?
About how over and over again I'd cry to you about being scared I wouldn't make it out.
And you told me, I'm glad that you went before me. And there was something about like, I went before you and I went through a lot of the rearranging, the ripping, the suffering, the healing in certain ways where on the other side, you'd be like, I don't think I'm going to make it out. Is it going to be? And I'd keep promising you, no, this is a season. You're going to get to the other side of this. This is going to be your springboard into the greatest parts of your entire life. You're going to get the most freedom and you're going to come out with the most life you've ever had.
And you would say things like, this is the season of suffering. These are the lessons of suffering. And this is so, and you'd say it was beautiful and valuable and that you went through it and that you felt in the middle like you were never going to get out and that you were going to be broken forever and that there would never be another side. But you did get out and there is another side.
And as a side note on that, I think we talked about this before, but there are very, in our religious backgrounds, there are two very extreme camps. One that almost immortalizes and makes a god out of suffering, like life is only about suffering. And then there's the other side, that there is no suffering. It's all joy. It's all happiness. Everything is
prosperity gospel.
Prosperity gospel. And there are two extremes that don't want to live in the tension of a reality of like, no, humanity is a beautiful blend of the reality of suffering and triumph and victory.
Yes. All
together.
Yes.
And they all paint a picture of something. The suffering oftentimes is the liberation of us out of the hell that we currently exist in. So, I talked often about the idea that it was like hell was being ripped out of the deepest places of my soul in my season of suffering. I was having to look at my greatest fears and feel my greatest wounds that had been packed way down, that had been torturing me under the surface and causing me to further destroy myself and my own life. And in that season of suffering was the blinders were coming off. The dissociation was coming off. I was looking face to face with the darkest places of my soul that I didn't want to look at. And there was beauty inside of it. There was life being granted to me because I was being liberated out of my hell into the fullness of life as I became tethered back to unconditional love. The very thing which humanity was created in and through and for, which is unconditional love. The seasons of suffering are oftentimes us being liberated from our hell and reconnected, retethered back into that unconditional love. And that's what happened for me, is a revelation of that. And I've watched as you've truly begun to connect into love, as you got to the darkest parts of you, the parts of you that feel the most unlovable, the most abandoned, the most pain, and you look at it face to face, and then love gets in as people and circumstances where your heart, your walls are down, you're soft and you're tender and you're receptive, and all of a sudden you're letting people in a way that you've never let them in before. And it's like heaven invading earth. It is the kingdom of heaven being very present in your story, and it has been in my story. And so some people avoid suffering. There's unhealthy suffering that is self-inflicted suffering that is unnecessary. There is evil suffering inflicted by others when someone maybe someone gets cancer and and we lose someone we love, or someone murders someone, or these darkness things that create undue suffering. That's not what I'm talking about. It's suffering of the soul when we look internally and we feel our reality and we come face to face with it. And so, oftentimes people are running from the very thing that is the open door to all the promises that life holds from them. They're running from the suffering, the invitation. And we're not meant to live in it. We're not meant to build a home inside of suffering. We're meant to pass through it as a gateway into the fullness of life.
Yeah, I remember so many people, I've taught on learning how to love yourself for so many years. And a lot of Christians will be like, pray for me that I can have your anointing, blah, blah, blah. And I was like,
I don't even know what that means.
I was like, you don't understand. The way that I learned to love myself is I had to face the most unlovable places and let love in there. That is one of the most painful journeys. It sounds nice. Like, let's learn how to love ourselves. That sounds fun.
Yeah, it sounds foofy.
That sounds, like, let's go to a spa and let's change how we dress and let's get some confidence. No, it means facing all of the places where you have the most shame and the most self-hatred and letting love in there and letting people in there and so I think the journey for me of suffering, I'm more vulnerable. I would call this the year of vulnerability.
That's a great way to put it for you.
I'm more vulnerable than I've ever been before, and it is horrible. And it is glorious. Like I can cry on a regular basis and I can share my feelings with people, but I also feel like scared of things I've never felt scared of before. And it feels like being a baby again and trying to learn how to walk and learn how to run. And it's not for the faint of heart, but I know that the softening, I'm like, this is everything. Those of you who've heard Paul Young on our podcast for years and years and years, I want to be like him. He's like Jesus.
Yeah.
There's not judgment. He has so much compassion for people.
And
you literally feel the kindness of God in his presence. And I've always been like, I want that. I don't want hard edges, and I don't want judgment. I don't want hierarchy. Like, I want to be somebody who looks like Jesus, who's humble and kind and always believes the best and sees the best in people. And so I would pray all the time, and he went through this 11-year process that was horrible. And I was like, do that with me. But I thought it'll never happen because I would never go through this. I mean, like we couldn't go through the same stories. And now I think, careful what you pray for. Don't do it. Don't pray that. No, I'm just kidding. And now I think this is the most beautiful journey because it is ripping me open, but I can see the things that I've always wanted to become. I can see them in the distance. I can see that we're headed that place where there actually is such a brokenness in a beautiful way. Like I've wanted to, there's something so beautiful about being broken where you actually let go of control and you actually let go of running from pain and trying to fix it and trying to pretend that you're better than you are. And I think about this with Christianity all the time. All of the leaders are having to pretend that they're better than they are. Yeah. All of and self-help gurus, like we're all just pretending
they're better than they are.
Yes. Yeah. And it feels so liberating to not pretend and to let people see how screwed up you really are. Yeah. And, I just don't know where I was going now, but
I think it's part of what we're saying here is that you don't have to play pretend. You don't have to run and hide from what's going on inside, what 2020 has brought up. It's not permanent, but again, it's an invitation. But in that invitation, you are going to look messy and it's not going to look perfect, and it's okay. And it's okay to embrace that you're human. I'm a human. This is part of my humanity. This is part of my human story that's being written about my life as I engage unconditional love and I allow it to have its way in my heart and my mind. And people are so trapped and terrified of being rejected and not being enough that they won't allow themselves to properly participate in that process. Yeah. But for those who are brave enough to just risk and say yes, that's all the more risk we have to do is just, yep, I'm going to allow it to happen. There is something so magnificent and beautiful inside of that.
Yeah. And brokenness is not something to be feared. I mean, it's like brokenness allows you to let go of the things you've been wanting to let go of. Like who you think you should be and what you think you need to look like and where you think you need to get to, all of the, everything.
The heavy burdens and heavy weights, they just start fading away.
I mean, it doesn't feel like they're fading away when you're processing it, but eventually they do.
But hindsight's 20/20. And you see it and you go, oh, I progressively was liberated. And that's been the beauty of even watching you to say this, is I'm watching it progressively happen. And I think the beauty for me as well on my end was what I went through the previous years in my own life gave me such grace to allow it to happen, to not be overly responsible on an emotional level, like me having to spiral out or anything internally. I could just go, I love her. I'm with her. I will be kind. I will be patient. I will be gentle. I will be present. But I just get to be in this and watch her struggle to get out of the cocoon. It's almost like there's this cocoon that suffocates us from spreading our wings and flying, so to say, in that analogy, and watching you thrash back and forth inside of it, trying to find life and break out of it. I could just watch that evolution happen. And that was wonderful and painstaking and scary, yet hopeful. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thrashing, that's for sure. And I think that because you'd walk through it, there's something, I mean, truly remarkable. You were the most comforting this year you've ever been because you weren't trying to fix it for me.
No.
You believed the process was powerful.
And I believe that he's a good dad. I'd like, whoa. I really connected with what a good dad my creator is and how fully invested and involved he is, that no matter how the story played out, I trusted that his goodness was with me and you in it. And so there's this thing that allowed me to graciously and peacefully participate in surrender, which we've talked about before. Not give up, but surrender. Let go of my control. Let go of my need to figure out how to fix it, how to alleviate things, and just go, he's a good dad. He's got this. I know it, and no one will ever change my mind on it.
Yeah, you let down accusation, which you let down accusation before anything good happened.
It's true. I let go of my right to accuse God. Mm-hmm. And my right.
Which you've been wrestling with the entire time I've known you.
Yeah,
like,
I did.
When I'm sick or when you were sick or when horrible things were happening to people we loved, there would always be this thing of like, well, is he really good?
I remember there was a moment, I may have talked about it on here, I don't know, but I remember just being alone and saying on Father's Day, Daddy, I'm so sorry that I have accused you and agreed with accusation about your character and nature. And I didn't say that because I felt like he was angry at me. I felt like this genuine tenderness inside of me of like, I have misplaced accusation. I'm really sorry. I'm letting go of my right to accuse you, and I'm letting go of my need to find a place to blame myself, Abby, the world around us, our parents, anything. I'm just like, I surrendered my right to blame and accuse anything and just go, I can just be in pain and just let it be what it is and allow the comforter that is my creator to participate with me. And all my walls came down and I watched beauty come out of all that.
Yeah. And then you actually connected more with God through such painful circumstances instead of less.
And that's the thing is that.
And you softened so much.
Pain can either drive us into a disconnected life or can drive us to a connected life.
Oh, I see what you did
that
there.
Just happened.
Hindsight's 2020 on the connected life.
But it can drive you into the arms of love. It can drive you into places of becoming more soft, more tender, more vulnerable than ever before. It can liberate you. So 2020 is not about a time of life that was meant to destroy us. We will move on from 2020. Everyone will move on. Some will move on and walk the rest of their life with limps because they decide to stay with a limp. Others will allow their heart to be mended. They will agree with vulnerability. They will allow love in. They will heal from the limp that they found, and they will feel stronger than ever before and more liberated.
And some of us will be terrified that we're going to be stuck in the pain forever, but we were actually moving through it all along. And I wanted to mention, like, just for you, because it's one thing you didn't mention was the aloneness you had to walk through this year.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't help you. I mean, you have been on your own in our business. You have, even in the Me Coming Alive process. And so I'm wanting to say, like, you've had to go through your ups and downs too this year.
Yeah. And all of it, though, because of my heart posture of being so shattered again a couple of years ago, that shattering, it was weird because the ache didn't feel as aching, as painful. The ache was different as it happened. It was a unique ache because it was met by something immediately. It was immediately taken care of. It wasn't compounded. When being shattered the way I was kept me from compounding the pain. As the aloneness was happening. And in fact, I came out of feeling alone the most in some of the ways when I was the most alone inside of our marriage. Yeah. Because I connected to love.
Right. Because I had nothing to offer.
Absolutely.
This whole year. I've done nothing. And yet you have.
And so there's this expansion of me tapping into the source of God through both other people and through that direct source of intimacy inside of a spiritual connection.
Yeah. So I think if you're out there listening, you have the choice. Circumstances don't get to define what happens for you. There is a remembrance here that good can happen at any given time. Sometimes you think you're just in a hole, but you're actually digging your way out through a whole nother area, and light is about to burst forth and you don't even know it. And I think that one of the things that I want to challenge people, we have Living Fully Alive coming up.
And our very last day for sign up is the 1st.
Yeah, but maybe I'll try to get you to open it up a couple extra days.
Okay, go ahead. What were you going to say?
But it's a disruptor.
Yeah.
What it is it's something that disrupts you out of the rut. Kind of the way I talked about the Adventure Challenge boys. They disrupted me out of survival.
Yeah.
And agitated me to begin to want to live again and want to come alive. And living fully alive is so much about reconnecting to love and reconnecting to who you are and your personal power and helping you. Really, we made it so that kind of you can't avoid pain. Like the stuff that we've gone through, we can't avoid. You can't avoid sickness. You can't avoid world pandemics. But what you can do is you can know how to process them so that they can propel you forward and help you heal instead of breaking you down. And so living fully alive is actually that process.
Yeah.
How do you posture your heart through the ups and downs of pain? And this is why we have people take it 2 and 3 times. Like it's been out 3 years and we have clients that are taking it literally for the 3rd year in a row.
Yeah.
Because they're like, it resets me back to being connected to love, back to being powerful, back to a perspective shift that then I can launch off of the whole year and how I process what's happening around me.
So you're coming down to this is the final week. If you're going to get on board, you better get on board now.
Yeah.
And then it
Hurry
closes and class starts opening up January 6th and we go running like barreling like a freight train. You know, it's the last thing I'll say. It's interesting because one of my closest best friends, Marcus, is leaving.
Ugh.
He's moving and he has been such a beautiful gift to me for the last couple of years. He was there. He sat on the couch with me repeatedly when I was tanked out and couldn't function, and he would just be with me in my most vulnerable space. And he's been with me through this last 2 years as you've been going through your battles, and I've been able to actually go into his office and just cry, and he would just grab me and hold me and be like, I'm here for you, buddy, and just allow like healthy masculine love to be available to me. And it's one of those things where I'm so grateful for his role in my life, and as he's leaving, I could be really devastated by it, which I did cry. I cried really hard about it and allowed myself to feel it. But it's really cool because when you open your heart to a level of vulnerability and access to love through so many different avenues, like even as he transitions, I don't feel the devastation that I may have at a different time. I'm like, oh, that's really sad and I had to grieve it. But also I have excitement because I'm like, well, he's not gone forever in my life, but also there's other ways that like relationships are going to manifest in my life. And so there's like this new transition in a season from getting a house to even more new relationships flooding my life. And so a lot of people, the reason I bring that up is, again, a lot of you feel like there's just losses maybe that's happened throughout this year.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, 5 of my best friends, that's a lot.
And it's not, this year wasn't about it being a cruel joke.
No.
You know, it's about, and it may have happened. It may not have been planned out. It just did happen, but it can either look like a cruel joke or you can begin to go, all right, what do I need to grieve in it? And then how do I come alive?
Yeah.
How do I come fully alive?
Yeah. If you want a step-by-step how to come fully alive, we have a course called Living Fully Alive.
You can find that course at justinandabby.com right now. Sign up. With that said, to wrap this up, we just want to say thank you for allowing us to participate in your story as you've listened to us. And thank you for joining us in our story in 2020 and 2019. We're almost a full 2 years into this coming up. We're hitting our 2-year mark in January 1st. And we're so thankful for all the loving, kind messages we've gotten from people and the stories that people have shared about how they've been transformed by the connected life.
The people who've shared about it on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. And it's been every ounce of you guys being involved with us has been wonderful.
It's this connected life family that's so interesting because like we meet people, like, well, we do it in here. It's just us. Yeah. And it's like, does anyone hear this? I mean, we know we do, but then we actually start meeting people through social media and other opportunities. And it feels like we have family all around the world. And thank you for allowing us to be part of your family. And thank you for being part of our family.
Yeah.
So.
And one thing I'd recommend is do a year-end recap. Because when I started writing Justin's letter, I was shocked at how many things happened in 1 year.
Yeah.
And it's good to be able to, like I said, hold the good and the bad, to be able to remember that there were really good things and there were really hard things, you end up feeling proud of all the hard crap you went through. And you also feel proud and excited. You can feel the momentum. Even just doing this podcast, I'm like, I feel more momentum about our lives because when we tell this story, it reminds me that there is a bigger involvement, that there is a bigger plan, that we are moving forward. So do that for yourselves.
Yeah, that's your
Go do your own podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, not go have a chat with one of your friends of year-end review. I mean, you can do your own podcast if you want about that. But
wow. Thanks for qualifying
I'm
all
blabbering.
that. You blabbermouth. Hey, with that said, if you got anything out of this podcast this year, do us a favor. Rate, review, subscribe, and share.
Yep.
Go tell the world about it. Help others get the help that they need. Invite them into the Connected Life family.
Yeah.
And listen to episodes with people and start talking about your heart journeys. Don't just listen to it yourself. Engage others in a journey with you so that you have your own stories to tell as you've participated in our world. So we love you all.
Happy 2020.
Happy New Year on Friday.
Yep.
Don't get too drunk.
Here we go. Let's do 21.
Don't make out with too many people. Randomly. You don't want to give Corona away. You don't want to get it. Right? I guess. Whatever.
All right. Goodbye.
Goodbye.